Okay, so welcome back to our channel Independent Training. Today our discussion will be board of directors and officers. But before we are going to start, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. So our discussion today, the first one will be the distinctions between executive and non-executive director. What will be the difference actually between those two directors? But don't forget that this discussion will be based on assumption one-tier board system structures. And then after that we are going to discuss what is actually the legal obligations between executive directors and then non-executive directors. So shall we start? So thank you for group 2 for your presentations. What will be the topic of your presentations? Anyone?
About the directors and officers po.
Okay. Okay, about the directors and officers. So thank you. That will be quite interesting. I'm hoping because there's a lot of behavioral aspect, especially we are taking part into the discussion regarding definition of director, if I did not mistaken, and then also there's an ethical behavior by the director. So I hope that the presentation will be a lot of excitement and then a lot of discussion. Especially we are put more aspect behavioral over there, and then so group 2 will be consists of Miss Jesa and then Miss Angeli, Mr. Adriel, thank you, Miss Angelica, and then Mr. Gebia. That will be the group of your presentation. So you can present your presentation after this one.
Good day everyone, I am Angelica Joy A. Ganados and I am the first presenter of Group 2. Our topic will be the types of company directors and officers. So first, we will discuss the definition of directors. Section 9 of Corporations Act of 2011 defines director of a company or other body as a person who, first, is appointed to the position of a director. Please take note of the word appointed. A director is usually appointed by the shareholders or the board. Second, is appointed to the position of alternate director and is acting in that capacity regardless of the name that is given to their position. So, an alternate director is defined in Section 1 of Companies Act of 2008 as a person elected or appointed to serve as the occasion requires in substitution for a particular director or director of that company. However, the definition of a director is not only limited to those who are appointed. This section also defines director or also states that unless the contrary intention appears, a person who is not validly appointed as a director if they act in the position of a director. So, the only difference of this definition to that of alternate director is that this director in this definition is not validly appointed. He is acting as a director but he is not validly appointed. Next, the directors of the company of the body or body are accustomed to act in accordance with the person's instructions or wishes. With this definition, directors are categorized into four. We have the de jure directors, the de facto directors, the shadow directors, and the nominee directors. First, the de jure directors. De jure directors are validly appointed to the position of a director. So, de jure directors are directors by law. They are appointed as per law or they are registered to the company as a director. Second, de facto directors. De facto directors are those acting as a director. So this means that a de facto director is someone who fulfills the role of a director without being formally appointed. So, de facto directors satisfies the definition in paragraph B, statement number 1. Okay? Next, shadow director. Shadow directors satisfies the definition in section 9, paragraph B, statement number 2. So, shadow directors are those individuals who are neither appointed to the position nor directly acting as a director, but who manipulates the board behind the scenes. So, the shadow directors are just using their influence. They are not appointed and they are not acting as a director, but they are moving behind the scene. Lastly, the nominee directors. So, nominee directors are nominated to the board by a majority shareholder or other stakeholders. So, occasionally, there are circumstances where a group of people with an interest in a company wish to appoint a representative or nominee to the board of directors. So, although they act as a representative of that majority, the nominee directors are still bound by law to act in the same way as any other director. So, a nominee director is nominated by a majority of the group to represent that group. Okay, so that's the definition of a director. The next topic will be the definition of officers, which will be discussed by my group mate. Thank you.
Good day everyone, I am Jayo Delora Gabia, and at this point of time, we will going to define what an officer is. But before we will dig into what the definition of an officer, we will first outline the important points that we are going to tackle as we go through the definition of an officer. First is that we will going to tackle the statutory definition of an officer. Second one is we will also tackle the senior executives and senior employees. And lastly, we will going to tackle the middle management as officers. And take note in this video, the presentation that's being displayed on the screen is based on Australian context. And it is quite different from the Philippine context, but there are just a few differences on it. So, let's start. First, statutory definition. The provisions of the Act often extends beyond directors to any officer. The aim with such a definition is to ensure that other individuals in the company not appointed as directors or acting as directors or shadow directors are also covered by certain provisions of the Act, and they cannot escape liability if they are in breach of certain provisions. This definition is still anchored in the definition of a director. This means that any person other than directors or shadow directors are still liable if he or she breach certain provisions or breach the contracts stated in the Corporation Act. And who are these persons other than directors or shadow directors? These persons are considered as officers. Under Section 9 of the Corporation Act lays down some people or persons that can be considered as officer. First and foremost, an officer may be a director or secretary of the corporation. And if we will going to compare it to the Philippine context, a director is equivalent to a president. And one important thing to be considered as president is that he or she must be a director of the corporation. And that's why in the Australian context, a director may be considered as officer. Next is persons. Who are these persons? If the person whose decision making can affect the corporation as a whole, then it is considered as officer. If a person who can significantly influence the corporation, then it is also considered as an officer. And lastly, if that person is accustomed to do things that being commanded by a director, it is also considered as an officer. Also, an officer can be a receiver and manager of the property of the corporation, an administrator of the corporation, an administrator of a deed of company arrangement executed by the corporation, a liquidator of the corporation, or a trustee or other person administering a compromise or arrangement made between the corporation or someone else. So as we can observe, this person greatly affects or significantly affects the corporation, or whose decision making can affect the corporation. That is an officer. Number 2, senior employees and senior executives as officers. The aim with the broad statutory definition is also to ensure that there is no doubt that certain duties imposed by the corporation's law apply to a group of people who will not necessarily fall under the definition of director. It is a well-established principle that senior employees or senior officers of a corporation owes duties similar to those of directors towards the company. This means that it is very important that we need to distinguish who are senior executives and senior officers as officers and directors, because even though they place similar duties in the corporation, it is just only a matter of influence. It is because a director plays a great influence to the corporation than of the senior executives and senior employees. Number 3, middle management as officers. HIH Royal Commission report is quite controversial. It is because AIH Royal Commission is a corporation that has been collapsed because of the mismanagement. And Justice Owen was struck because he found out that the mismanagement or the collapse of the corporation is being caused by the middle management. And because of this fact, he was able to conclude that middle management can be considered as officers. But however, the commission or the board disapproved this claim. And as of now, middle management for Justice Owen is considered as officer, but to the board or to the commission, the middle management isn't considered as officers. So, what are your thoughts about this one? All in all, an officer differs from directors in a way that officers are those persons other than directors, with the exception if that director is being designated as an officer, then he or she can be an officer. However, persons who can significantly influence and whose decision making can impact the corporation, then it is also considered as an officers.
Good day, everyone. My name is Adriel C. Casinio from Group 2, and I will be discussing about the types of company officers. To start, let's have executive and non-executive directors. As with the previous discussions about executive and non-executive directors, the Act makes no distinction between the two types of directors, but they have different roles to be played in an organization. Executive director works full-time in the corporation, and they are the office bearer in the company, while non-executive director have same statutory and common law duties as executive director, but they do not work in the companies in full-time basis. The next one is independent non-executive directors. It has been a long time in realizing that non-executive directors can play an important role on boards because they bring a broader perspective. So, independent non-executive directors are those members of the board who does not have a material relationship with a company or related person. They provide independent oversight and constructive challenge to the executive director. The next one is connected non-executive directors. The term connected non-executive directors, or CNEDs, are not part of the company's management, but have some relationship with the company. They are also called affiliated directors, meaning they are the non-executive director who do not meet on or more of the criteria stipulated to classify them as independent non-executive director. The next one is the lead independent directors or senior independent directors. This type of directors must provide a sounding board of the chairman and to serve as an intermediary for the other directors when necessary. They also be available to shareholders if they have concerns about which contract through normal channels or chairperson, CEO, or other executive directors has failed to resolve or for which such contract is inappropriate. They also lead meeting with all non-executive directors at least annually without the chairperson to take evaluation of the chairperson's performance. The next one is the managing director and the chief executive officer and executive directors. In Australian Corporation Act, the company may appoint one or more of themselves to the office of the managing director for such period. Take note that there is no definition of managing director in the Act, but it is only by inference that it could be concluded that a board will have the power to appoint one or more of themselves to the office of the executive director and confer on an executive director any of the power that a director may exercise. The reason of this inference is that it is less common to use the term managing director in public companies. In the influence of United States of America, it is common to use the term executive director instead of managing director. The next one is chairperson. In section 248E of the Act, it is stated that the director must elect a director present to chair a meeting. So the chairperson will be elected to act as a proxy of a member and owes duty to the individual members who directed their proxies to her or to him. And with such circumstances, a chairperson owes duties distinct from the duties owed by a director. The next one is the alternate director. The appointment of alternate director is useful when a director is unable to be present at a meeting. The alternate director may be appointed to act as an agent of the appointing director. The alternate is nevertheless a director in the eyes of the law, with the same rights, duties, and responsibilities of a director. And the last company officer that we will be discussing is about secretary. The company secretary has a key role to play in ensuring that board procedures are both followed and regularly reviewed. Secretary also plays not only in assisting the board to fulfill its tasks, but also in ensuring a healthy and free flow of information between board and management. So again, this is Adriel from Group 2. That will be all. Thank you.
Good day, viewers. I am Angeli Otto, and the topic that we are going to discuss today is all about training and induction of officers. Let's start. First, let us define what is training. Defined by Ranulfo Payos in his book Human Resource Management, training is an organized learning activities in the organization to improve performance and/or personal growth for the purpose of improving the job, the employee, and the organization. Training focuses on learning the necessary skills required to perform a job. In other words, training is both focused upon and evaluated against the job that an individual currently holds. Thus, the ultimate beneficiary of training is the organization. Let us proceed to the importance of training directors. The importance of training directors was emphasized in the Cadbury Report. Training was considered to be highly desirable because directors come from different backgrounds and their qualifications and experiences may vary considerably. Moreover, the goal of training is for employees to master the knowledge, the skills, and behavior emphasized in training programs to apply them to their day-to-day activities. It was also emphasized that the training of directors is very important to ensure that directors adhere to the corporate governance practices. To further understand the serious problem with director training in the past, Bob Garat quoted, "The training was based upon a managerial training at a higher level or a type of mini MBA training." It argues the distinction between managing
and directly requires completely different type of training. The role of directors focuses on the direct, govern, guide, monitor, oversee, supervise, and comply as elaborated in the previous discussion. Moreover, there is a need for director training in at least the following areas. First, their statutory and regulatory obligations. Second, their ethical obligations. And third, there constitutes good operational practice. There are also lots of useful list of types of director training. Namely, first, formal external training course on the aspects of director's work. Second, in-house board development programs designed specifically for the entire board. Third, updating and briefing sessions for the board of individuals directors. Fourth, relevant higher degree courses in corporate governance, corporate strategy, and other board-related topics. Fifth, experiential sponsorship programs. Sixth, mentoring with a one-to-personal trainer. Seventh, self-directed learning and continuous self-development. And eighth, board experience itself provide one of the best learning experiences. The induction of new directors. As a part of training process for directors, they should be properly introduced to the company, especially independent outside directors. Although this may vary among corporations because different cultures. Corporate culture refers to a set of beliefs and behaviors that guides how a company manages its employees and handle external business transactions. Meaning, an appointment of director will be based upon the proven skills, experience, qualifications, and past track record. But, on the other hand, they may know nothing about the corporate culture, their new corporation, or about the directors and senior executives of the corporation. The induction process should aim the following. First, building an understanding of the nature of the company, its business, and which markets in which it operates. For example, induction should cover the company product or services, the group structure, subsidiaries, joint ventures, the company constitutions, board procedures, and matters reserved for the board. Summary details of the company, principal assets, liabilities, significant contracts, and major competitors. The company major risks and management strategy, key performance indicators, and regulatory constraints. Second, building a link with the company's people, including meeting with the senior management, visits the company site other than the headquarters to learn about production and services and meet employees in a formal setting, participating in board strategy development. Third, building and understanding the company's main relationship, including meeting with the auditors and developing knowledge of, in particular, who are the major customers, who are the major suppliers, and who are the major shareholders, and what is the shareholder relation policy. With participation in meetings and the shareholders can give the first-hand feel as well as letting shareholders know the non-executive directors are. That's all for today. I hope you learned a lot in this topic. Thank you.
Good day everyone, I am Jessa Mayang Cosayetarios and I will be the last reporter of Group 2 and I'm going to discuss the ethical behavior by directors. So ethical behavior by directors is one of the most important cornerstone of good corporate governance as it sets the tone for the ethical behavior of the corporation. So we all know that good corporate governance begins within the company's internal practices and policy. And since directors hold the highest authority within the company, so they are the most expected to act properly, to set example and oversight the moral and ethics of the company. So when the directors follow the moral standards, then the rest of the people involved in the organization will also act accordingly because of the influence shown by the BOD. So let's say that you are considering to be part of the board of member. So it is important to know that you must first have a good understanding of what is the value and moral of the company, because one of your role is to ensure that the ethics are embedded and exercised within the organization. That is why we can say that when a company has a strong ethical conduct, then that signifies that they also employ a good corporate governance. So Next one is, according to Principle 3 of the 2007 ASX Principles of Good Corporate Governance and Best Practice Recommendations, states that ethical behavior by the corporation should be promoted. So in this principle, which we already discussed previously, board of directors and managements are guided as to the practices necessary to maintain assurance in regards with integrity and ethical practices of the entity. So it is essential for an organization to promote ethical conduct because it will aid them to function properly. So accordingly, an organization that is perceived to act ethically can realize a positive benefits and improve business outcome, wherein in the long run it can have a significant impact to its financial performance. So another is, these aspects are dealt with in the code of conduct. So code of conduct may differ from one company to another. So this is defined as to how companies' employees should act on a day-to-day basis. So it reflects the organization's daily operations, core values, and overall company culture. So with this, ethical conduct should be dealt in accordance with code of conduct of the company and vice versa to be fully effective when it is executed. So for the next one, this is in accordance to the reports provided again by the ASX on 2003. It is recommended that corporations should establish a code of ethical and legal conduct. This is to guide the board and executive as to the practices necessary to maintain confidence in the company's integrity and responsibility and accountability of individuals for reporting and investigating reports of unethical practices. So we should take down these three important keywords: the accountability, integrity, and responsibility. So these are some important values needed to preserve a healthy work environment in the workplace. So without these values, the culture of the company is at risk for poor organizational development, which eventually might affect the overall health of the organization. So there are many reasons why business fails, and one of it might be due to unethical behavior, which plays some part in contributing towards corporate collapses. So unethical behavior has serious consequence for both individuals and the organization. So it can lose the reputation, credibility, and the productivity will decline, the general morale will be gone, and it will normally lose the confidence given by the shareholders and the stakeholders of the company. So unethical behavior can result in significant financial loss and worst, bankruptcy. Nowadays, there is still confusion as to how ethical behavior can be judged. Others would say that the ways in which people view ethics differ so much to the extent that we will never be able to find the common ground of what is really meant by ethical behavior, which is true because what might be ethical for me might be unethical for others, and we cannot argue that because of the differences in our denomination like a religion, culture, norms, and etc. That is why, to elevate this issue, Kendall and Kendall provided a general guidelines against which ethical behavior can be judged and to detect unethical behavior. So these are the general guidelines of ethical behavior, but I'm not going to elaborate it one by one because I believe these are already understandable as to why these are considered as ethical act. So number one is the general views on ethics, what and how important the issues are, such as consideration and protection of the environment, for fair trading, defending human rights, not investing in countries with unacceptable regimes, supporting local communities, fair treatment of staff. And the next one is particular stakeholders' view on or angles, wherein it is more specific, such as customers' belief when purchasing, employees' moral values, shareholders' feelings of responsibility, and local community of interest. And this is where my report and the report of Group 2 concluded. I hope, or we hope, that you have learned something from us. And if you do have additional inputs to our discussion, or if you have clarifications, questions, please feel free to comment it down and we will be happy to answer it, of course, with the guidance of our professor, Sir Harry. So that's it. Thank you and keep safe, and may you have a wonderful day ahead. Bye-bye.
Okay, so thank you for the presentation. It was a great presentation, and then that's wrap up for today. So once again, thank you to Miss Jessa, Miss Angeli, Mr. Adriel, Miss Angelica, and then Mr. Gabia. Now we can start our discussion in comment sections below, and then thank you for watching and see you in the next presentation.